Remember, I shared about my grandmother who was born in the Great Depression. So she really had a very, very survival money story, obviously, because she went through something that my generation is not seeing. But my generation is seeing this massive amount of wealth, and the cost of living is going crazy right now, no matter where you live. Welcome to the Moms Makin Dough podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt, and today is episode 41, Healing Your Money Wounds and Harnessing the Momentum of Your Money Wins. How to rewrite your money story and the story that's probably keeping you stuck in scarcity rather than allowing you to move to abundance. And I wanted to start today's episode off. This has been something that just has really just bubbling up. It's something that I've talked about often, but it is something that I haven't done a dedicated episode to in a while. So I wanted to dive in with this topic today. And to open it up, I wanted to share one of my most favorite quotes. And it is, "The mind, once stretched by a new idea, never returns to its original size." I think it's Oliver Wendell Holmes that possibly said that. Don't quote me on that. But I also hear it is, I always think of the mind once expanded to the mind and the wallet once expanded to a different size, never returns to its original dimensions. Because I think about this is when I look at the premise of this show, Moms Makin Dough, we have 4 items we focus on: how to make money, how to manage money, how to multiply your money. But it all starts with the big M, and that's what this episode is going to cover today, is the mindset behind money. Again, it's something I love talking about. That's why I love doing this show. And because before you can do any of those 3 other things, the make, manage, or multiply your money, you have to address the mindset. So again, we haven't done an episode, so let's dive in today and really start off with the basics of where do money beliefs come from? Because before we can heal any of our money wounds, we need to be able to know the source of them for us to be able to heal and then release them. Which is I want you guys to really pick up on that. I don't think that's something that I've been talking a lot about on when I first started talking about this, is about the importance of identifying them, the importance of healing them, and also the importance of actually releasing them so something new can come into your life, whether it be financially or just in any way or any area of your life. I think this is a concept that can carry over to many other areas. And let's face it, money and talking about money for most of us is a pain point. Maybe not all the time, but it has been at some point in our lives. So that's why I just, like I said, love talking about this. And I hope you guys will get a tremendous amount out of it. I'm going to give you an exercise, of course. That's the teacher and coach in me. But let's talk about where do money beliefs come from? I really look at them as there's a couple different ways they come into your life. The first is from observation. Ryan, my husband, loves to call it from our 4 teachers: mother, father, teacher, preacher. These are the big thing I want you to discern in me saying this, though, is money beliefs here, when they come from your mother, father, teacher, preacher, they are usually formed from observation. They are formed from observation of people that you didn't explicitly choose to observe. So like I said, a lot of this is going to be through osmosis, or a lot of this is going to be your unconscious mind's money programming. And what I love to share here too is that a lot of money beliefs here at this point in your life, I'm looking at when you're much younger, when you're not an adult yet. I would say really to the age of 18, maybe even push it back a little bit to 21, you are really not in control of sharing, of creating a conscious belief system around money until you start to get out into the world as an adult. So for some of those people, that might be 26 when you have to come over out of your parents' health insurance or move out of your parents' home. I don't know, more and more 30-year-olds are living with their parents, which is scary as hell. But let me just not digress. But really just thinking about maybe you grew up hearing like, we can't afford that, or that's not in our budget. Or sayings like one of the ones that I used to hear a lot was money doesn't grow on trees. Or you just need to work harder, or work your way up the corporate ladder. All of these things that we are just kind of like cliche little sayings, but they do have meaning attached to them, that sometimes you're not in control, where hence the word unconscious programming. These are early voices. And like I said, most of them are going to form beliefs from observation. And what I want to really touch on here too is that a lot of this is generational stuff, right? Like generational patterns of money. And it always makes me think of as like my grandmother, who I absolutely love dearly. She is one of my most favorite people. She is no longer on the earth. She is up in heaven, as one of my guardian angels, but she was who I spent a tremendous amount of time with as a child. And she always had these little cliche sayings. Some of them were really, really powerful, but some of them I've chosen now that I'm an adult not to really feed or to rewrite. And one of the ones that she always used to say was, like I said, money doesn't grow on trees. But here's the thing that is really amazing is that my grandmother was born in 1929, the day after the Great Depression. And so she was one of 9 children. 2 of them which had died early in her childhood. And so she grew up in this home where it was very, very, it was survival mode from the beginning. And she rewrote a lot of those money stories for herself, but a lot of them did generationally get passed on. And that's when I really started to realize that I, as an adult, get to have some say in consciously choosing who I'm going to model for money, but also consciously choosing what path I want to start to walk down. So the next part that where you would get money beliefs from. So if that's the first part is, like I said, mother, father, teacher, preacher. I just use my grandmother as an example. It could be any parent figure. The next one is going to be like significant events. These are moments that have etched some financial emotion into our story. So and I'll give you some examples, and then I'm going to talk about one of mine. This could be, hey, I got fired or laid off from my job. Something that was drastic. It might be a divorce. It might be you constantly overdraft your bank account. It might be the first time you bought something. It might be a positive, something you bought with your money and you felt so empowered. It might be a windfall or an inheritance that you got that was unexpected, and it might have changed your life. I told this story the other day is like, have you ever heard those stats of people that have won the lottery? It might be that you won the lottery, which obviously is very rare, but of the people that win the lottery, it's very, very common that they spend that money in a very short period of time because they don't have a good money blueprint for them to support keeping that money. So they actually push it away. And so just thinking about like money is energy, right? It is a flow of energy. So, but it also has so much emotion attached to it. So when we think about these events, we want to think about like, what did that event or experience start to mean to me when it comes to money? One I'm going to share is when I got audited, or my husband and I got audited by the IRS. And holy shit, that was a period of my life that I would love to blank out and possibly forget. So I want you to think of it this way, that every significant experience or event is planting a seed. Sometimes it's a wound and sometimes it's a win, which we're going to get into today. And then there's the third category of where do money beliefs come from. And that is going to be the people that you have chosen as influences in your life. These are people you possibly look up to, or you probably, I shouldn't say possibly, you look up to. They are either maybe your spouse. In some cases, those chosen influences, a spouse is not a good influence on your money blueprint. Number one cause of most divorces is arguing about money. Money and sex, two hot buttons, right? Then the next thing is going to be like mentors. Maybe it's someone that mentored you. Maybe it's a coach you've hired because you wanted to get good at a specific skill. Maybe it was a real estate investing coach that gave you a totally different perspective than what you had from the people you observed that you didn't get to choose. And man, this gets me going, but I cannot share this topic with this part of the categories without hitting on this topic. And that is influencers, like looking at the people that you follow in your feed when it comes to social media, because they are shifting your belief system more than you ever could be able to quantify nor imagine. So being really careful of like, who do you follow on Instagram? What are their money beliefs? What are they teaching you? Either, are they teaching you to be, generous with your money? Are they teaching you to be really good with your money? Or are they teaching you just how to spend it and how to consume instead of create? So this is really those three categories. This is where our money beliefs come from observation of people we did not choose, but we observed. Mother, father, teacher, preacher is what I like to say there, just so it's easy for you to remember. The second is going to be significant events or experiences where you had some financial emotion attached to whatever it was, whether it was a wound or a win. And then finally, your chosen influences. So these are going to be people you look up to, like your possibly your spouse, but most likely mentors or coaches, and yes, even influencers. And here's your first exercise is I want you to do what I call the awareness audit, because that's what this episode is going to be all about, is just building awareness of your current money wounds and also identifying some of your money wins. And the reason that we want to do that is because this is going to build into the next episode I'm going to do, which is putting your awarenesses into alignment to help you go from stuck or scarcity and move much more into abundance. So I want you to grab your journal, and there will be a template for this episode that you'll be able to download that I've created for you, or my team, I should say, has helped me create. And I want you to write down is like, who did I learn from in observation? Like, who did I spend the most time with and what was some of the things that I observed from them or they directly taught me about money? Remember, I shared about my grandmother who was born in the Great Depression. So she really had a very, very survival money story, obviously, because she went through something that my generation is not seeing. But my generation is seeing this massive amount of wealth, and the cost of living is going crazy right now. No matter where you live, I happen to live in the number one most expensive state, Massachusetts, right now. Other than I believe Hawaii is actually moved above us, but obviously for obvious reasons, because they've had a lot of things that have shifted their economy, but also they're an island, right? So I like to say on the mainland of USA, we are the most expensive state to live in right now. And it is, but who I learned from with my grandmother, like I said, she was someone I so respected, admired. And so the part of the story I want to share too is that when I do this, I write down what are some of the things that person taught me. I try to really identify the person that actually had the most influence, either good or bad, in this part of the exercise, who I learned from. Next, what event shaped me? In my experience, like I said, I shared about getting audited. But one of the best things that I ever did when I think about like a money win was buying my first 2-family home. And these were two very different events, and they both have amazing lessons and also some healing that has to happen on both of them. And who am I choosing to learn from now? So those are the 3 questions. who have I learned from in the past, mostly unconsciously through observation? What events have shaped me? And like I said, good and bad, which we're going to break down this exercise into both. And then who am I learning from now? Like, who's the number one person that if I'm going to hop on Instagram, what's the one content reel that I always look at? I like to follow, I love Layla Hermosi. She is a total badass, owns a huge company. But she is no bullshit. I love that she is no bullshit. And she is so amazing at just these concepts that have led her to tremendous wealth starting from nothing. And so I just really want you to think she's the first person that came to my mind when I even thought about walking you guys through this exercise. Ideally, what you would want to do is I want you to put 1 to 2 people in down for each question, because awareness is giving us the doorway to transition to change that is for, like I said, moving us from scarcity to abundance. And so the first part of this exercise that I want you to do, and here's what I really want you to do after this initial awareness audit, is I really want you to set time aside for your calendar. So if you're driving, you're listening to this, you're walking your dog, you're making dinner for your kids, you're taking in this information. But here's why I want you to actually give yourself the gift of sitting down and doing this exercise. And like I said, even downloading the template I'm giving you, is because I want you to see is that when you start to bring awareness to these beliefs and start to write them down, something big happens. And I'm going to give you an example of how powerful this is that just happened to me this week. And that is this. I was working with one of my clients, and I had given her an exercise from our last coaching session. And the coaching session is the previous session, she had to rewrite her pricing strategy and her programs out. And when she did that, she wrote down the monetary value that would be exchanged for this level of tiers. She had 3 tiers in her program. So she wrote that down, and I had her send it to me. And usually this exercise like this, we would talk through, but I had her write it down to me before we talked to it in this scenario. And when she did that, here's what happened. She sent it to me, and when I opened it up, now my job as the coach is to hold the container, not to pass judgment. So I looked at it and I read through it. And the first thing that I observed, I was like, we still have lots of work to do on her self-worth. Because I could see the pattern of her consistently wanting to undercharge. Now, fast forward to our next call, which happened to be this week, and we brought up the exercise. We went over what she had sent me, and before I even opened my mouth, again, my job as the coach is to hold the container, she said, I realized after I wrote this out and I sent it to you that I was charging too little, so I've made some adjustments. And I literally jumped up and did a happy dance for her while we were on the call, because I wanted her to recognize the massive amount of growth that I did not need to lead her down that path. I did not need to share what I initially thought without her already making that shift. And so this is where naming and writing out your money wounds is a huge part of the success of this exercise. So, again, this exercise will start to open up years of unspoken and unconscious beliefs. Same things like, what if people, I'll give you some examples. What if people say I'm greedy? Who am I to change that? Who am I to charge that? Just like I was talking with that client. And it's starting to show us and build some awareness of some of the money wounds that you might have that are keeping you stuck. So you're going to start to write. I want you to come up with 3 money wounds from downloading some of your money beliefs. And the ones that I always like to say is, I like to narrow it down to 3 because you can really get lost in how many money wounds you have, right? Because we all have them. They all evolve over time. The goal of the money wounds and bringing awareness is not so you start to reopen them, but so you start to figure out which ones are coming up for you at this point in your life to start to heal. And because I'm a big believer is that, like I said, giving you a context of just doing 3 is going to start to bring some awareness of like, hey, what are the 3 that are the most pressing? Because when they come up, they are presenting themselves for you to heal. And that is one of my beliefs when I work with anybody on working and rewriting their story, their money story. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, the money stories are the foundation of us moving from stuck or scarcity into abundance and alignment. And then you're going to take these 3 wounds and you're going to write them down. And it might be like, I never have enough. I'm just not good with money. If I make more, I'll just owe more to the government. That was one of mine. That was really keeping me stuck. And that's why I wanted to share that just real and raw. So you can imagine how, back to my experience with the significant events of getting audited by the IRS, right? But now, since I've started to really release and heal that belief, if I make more, I'll just pay more into the government. I've started to really shift that money story. And how I started to shift it was that the fact that I have skills that can create money value exchange is such a gift. The second thing is that the ability for me to have money that I also have to pay into the IRS is also a gift, because it means that I brought in money. And then the third thing is that from that audit, now that we're getting close to 10 years that's been, that has happened, I have learned so much more about the game of strategy and taxes and the rules that a lot of people that know how to keep more money as well as make a lot of money play by. And again, those are constantly changing, but it's become more of a game than a wound for me at this point. So that is the goal of us starting to look at some of the awareness of these beliefs and shift them. And that's why, like I said, if you're driving in your car, if you're walking your dog, or you're making dinner and passively listening this is why I want you to make time for yourself from this episode to give yourself the gift of looking at these money wounds. And then there's the second part of the exercise where we have to do the opposite. We have to look at the dark first, uncover the uncomfortable, and then we can look at some of the light, right? And here's what you're going to see is when you start doing this exercise on a consistent basis, this is what I have seen with not only myself, but many women I work with, is that if you start looking at the money beliefs that are coming up to heal, the money wounds that are coming up to heal, instead of avoiding them and just putting Band-Aids on them, what you will start to see is that many of your wounds can become your wins. Like I just shared about the IRS audit, which deserves its whole own episode, if I'm being honest. But I don't want to digress on that. And the next part of this is going to be downloading your money wins. Let's balance that energy exchange. Move from the dark into the light to gain some momentum. Like I said, to go from stuck in scarcity into abundance and alignment. And that is this. Every wound, there is a win waiting behind it to be acknowledged. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than you would like to see what that win is. And I'm a big believer in that it will keep coming up for you until you're ready to acknowledge it, heal it, and then release it for something new to take its place. And I'll give you a personal example here as well. Money wins. When my husband Ryan and I started his practice back in 2010, so we just celebrated our 15th anniversary of our original practice this year. Did it this month actually, October 4th. And one of the things when we started his practice is I really was committed to is that I wanted to purchase a house before we started the business. So we did what crazy people do. We purchased a house and started a business at the same time. And so, but our first home we bought was a duplex, and it was by far one of the best money decisions we have ever made. And this is really relevant because just last night, my husband and I were looking at the value of our home. And I was talking about getting it appraised and doing some like an equity line with it. And so I was starting to look into this. And we were just before we go the actual like professional route, we just looked up on Zillow what our home was worth. And now here's what's amazing. I don't put a lot of weight in this at all, nor should any of you. That is not good financial advice to value your home based on Zillow's estimate. But it is pretty accurate in terms of taking local sales and that sort of thing and feeding into a database. I don't, like I said, that's not going to be your only source of information, but it is going to give you kind of like a baseline to work off of. And what's so interesting, I looked at our home and this specific duplex, and I looked at it and I was like, holy shit. On the thing, it says like the value of the home, and then it says plus 107%, meaning that this investment from 15 years ago has returned 107%. And I was like, first of all, there is not many things other than real estate. But again, don't want to digress on that because I'm a huge fan of investing in real estate. But I was like, this is one of our biggest money wins. And the biggest thing on this is not only is it a money win that we shared together, it's also a money win that consistently pays us to this day and has paid our mortgage because it's a duplex where we lived in one side of it for 15 years. And now I'm starting to learn more about and be open more into leveraging this asset that we own. So we poured so much money into this home. We consistently upgraded things. I love our home and it is something, but now I'm starting to feel like I'm starting to look at this money win and starting to look at like, how can I use it for our next win? So I just really wanted to share that one story because that is the caveat here, is that I want you to really see the value in looking at your wounds first and then looking at your wins second. And that's what, like I said, there's going to be a free download for you to be able to do this, but you don't even need that download. You can literally just write 3 money wounds, 3 money wins, and then there's going to be some juice in between. Right. This one win just reframed. So that's the number one I wrote down because I never give you guys an exercise that I wouldn't do myself. So I want you to start your, what I call your 3 wins journal or your 3 wins column. If you have your 3 wounds on one side or above it, this is the next part of the exercise. You're going to write down what was 3 money wins you have. And I'm going to give you some examples beyond the one that I just shared. Is maybe it's you paid off a credit card in full for the first time ever. Maybe it was landing your first paid client. That is a huge one. I work with a lot of my coaching clients, is that a lot of them are transitioning from like multiple businesses or maybe a W-2 into being an entrepreneur. And one of the things that they do is that like we really celebrate that first paid client. And maybe it was saving $100 or $1,000 for the first time and not spending it. Like these could be really big wins, like I said, buying a home, or it could be really small wins. It could be selling a business. It could be a huge win like that. It could be recounting one of the best investments you ever made. One of my other female clients, she shared this, that one of the best investments she ever made was that she put her some money when she didn't have it to put aside, she said, to an investment fund. But then she had her sister, who was a financial planner, manage that fund. And so she had no emotional attachment to it. And she actually forgot, because it was so little money at the beginning, that she gave this account for her sister to manage. And she never looked at it again. My client never looked at it again. And it has become one of the best investments she has because she had no emotional reactivity to this investment, meaning her sister managed it. Her sister just literally didn't even share the reports. And so 10, 15 years later, she was absolutely shocked at how much money sat in this account that she could use for another investment. So, and I want you to, next to each win, really think about like, what did that win give you? Did it teach you, hey, I'm resourceful? Did it teach you I can attract opportunities? Did it teach you I'm safe to receive? This is a huge one that I'm working on personally myself, because the more you celebrate your wins, again, something I'm working on, you unconsciously, subconsciously start looking for proof of abundance and start to see it all around you. So you get out of the stuck in scarcity and you get to move into abundance so much more often, which leads to moving into alignment. Like you start spending your money in alignment with things that really matter, or on people that really matter to you. And you start letting go and releasing the people that don't and the things that don't. And this is going to be such a like kind of funny example, but I'm going to share it anyways. Is just recently, like I've worked out at Lifetime Fitness for a couple years now, mainly since they opened one in the town next to me. And this seems like such a little thing, but I have felt such huge movement since I did this. Our membership between my husband, a caregiver, my daughter, and I was almost $500 a month at Lifetime. And I started to look at this and it started to feel completely out of alignment based on what I was getting and how I was training. And I was training with a trainer, and following programming, and I was paying for that too. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this fancy gym anymore. When I signed up, I said the same thing. I don't need that bougie gym to my husband. And how he sold me on it was that they had childcare. And at that time, my daughter was 9 months old, and I really needed that childcare that could allow me to get my workout in and just mental space to breathe during my day as I adjusted to being a new mom. But now I no longer need to bring her there. She's in pre-K. She's in preschool. There's many times where, especially when I work with my husband, that I can get training in with his support without having to bring her with me. So I started to just really feel this the last couple months that this gym just wasn't in alignment with me. Then they did some pricing increases and I had some pretty negative customer service experiences with them, to which it allowed me to decide, hey, I don't need this membership anymore. But I even had a softer landing because I found out that I could put this on hold. So I put my membership on hold and I'm feeling out. How does it feel to not have this $500 a month membership? And guess what? Right now it's feeling really damn good, like a good decision. And this was something that, like I said, I now see as a huge money win for me, is looking at other things, little expenses, even though that's not little to some people, that I'm overspending on that actually don't bring me the same energy exchange for value. And not allowing that to bring me into scarcity, but opportunities for abundance by taking small wins like that. So, I hope this episode is really, really enlightened you, to start to look at like, hey, what are my money beliefs? What are my money wounds? And when I say, what are my money beliefs, the ones that are coming up for you right now to heal. What are my money wounds that are coming up for me to heal? And what are the money wins that I can leverage and use to keep propelling me forward into both abundance and alignment, which is what we're going to talk about on the next episode. And I'm going to show you how to bring these 3 parts of this exercise: identifying 3 money beliefs, identifying your top 3 money wounds that you are ready to heal, and then identifying those 3 money wins that will help you gain some momentum on getting unstuck from those beliefs, rewriting your story, releasing those money wounds, and then leveraging it to gain momentum to move you more into alignment in abundance, not just your finances, but possibly other areas of your life. In fact, I shouldn't say possibly. I know 100%, 110% they will move you into more abundance and alignment in your life. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Moms Making Dough. As always, if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone that might not know about us. And also, remember, we grow tremendously by your ratings and by your reviews. And just if you could give me a couple whatever you feel is necessary, rate this episode, rate this podcast, Moms Making Dough. I would sincerely appreciate it. And I will be back next week to deliver more money mindset part 2 on getting into abundance and alignment.